Hello, my dear friend, and welcome to the Spiritually Engineered Podcast, where we take a deep dive into the human experience from a spiritual perspective. Come on in, and I invite you to stay. All right. Another month has passed, and into another we go into getting into this first day of August, at least at the time of recording this, in August 2025. And so for this week's episode, we're going to be talking about, as we usually do, with a new episode and into a new month, a reading from the Wayshowers Philosophy, a special newsletter and inspiration blog series provided by the Wayshowers College. For additional information about the newsletter, feel free to check out the show notes. And a subscription is required to gain access to the full meditation, along with other resources to help you work with your intuition, live purposefully, and also fellowship and connect with like minds. And so, the spiritual theme of this month that we are in right now, August 2025, is Zeal. Zeal. And so, before diving into the meditation, I want to let's look at the definition of the word zeal, or at least a version of it here. So zeal is defined as great energy or enthusiasm in pursuit of a cause or an objective. And an experience I have related to that, I was brought back into my high school days. And one of the things that I got involved in outside of classes and the usual stuff, the requirements, right? I was heavily involved in sports, particularly cross country. And I can remember a feeling of the zeal I would have when we would go to a cross country meet, and we'd go to different places. Oftentimes we'll go to different campuses or different places where they have a course laid out that's about 5K, which is the typical length distance that all competing schools will have to go through. And I remember at the beginning of the course, there's always like this open field. And then there's like the defined line where all the schools line up behind. And then everybody gets boxed in so that each school stays together and they're not everybody spread out all over the place yet. and so I remember I'd be at the very back tail end of my school. And I remember just waiting as people get everything lined up and all the prep work is done. And we wait on I guess I wouldn't say, to make it for simplicity's sake, the referee, I guess, or the person who basically shoots the little, it's not like a gun, but it's like more of like makes a popping sound. It's not an actual gun. This gun-shaped thing that makes a noise to indicate, all right, go. But the feelings I would have before that moment I'd have nothing short of like butterflies. You know, I'm sure you have had an experience where you've experienced butterflies. But this is just one for myself where I would feel just excitement. But also at the same time, I'm not going to lie, I also felt very nervous too. But I would always think about, before even the race started and leading up to that moment, before the gun sounds off, quote unquote, I would think about, okay, I have a goal. I want to see if I can make it, if I can clear this course in X amount of time. And that would be something that I would always strive towards when it came to every cross-country meet. And, once I'm there, it's like, okay, I'm nervous. I got all this stuff, all these things happening and people chatting and other people feeling nervous and all that stuff. And then once once the start off gun looking device goes off, the sound off, indicating for us to go, then it's just like a whole rush of energy of just thrill, just moving through moving through me, because we're all just out there now. It's like everybody's now running forward, or some people sprint, but if you were smart, you'd be sprinting, but just good strides out in the open field before we start to funnel into to the course where it starts to narrow down, and it's just one of those things that I definitely appreciate and I loved about my high school days. That really kept me, in some sense, kept me on my toes. It kept me just like helped me in my competitive spirit, and I feel like having some competition, a little bit, a couple drops, I would say, of competition is healthy. But I think it's very important not to allow that the competition piece to like override everything. Not make it all competition, because when out of balance or when it's too much of that, then that's when it can get pretty dangerous, and where it can be of disservice and work against us. So, a little bit to start there. And so I want to share an excerpt that shares on one of the sub keys, fervor. And before reading this particular theme here, I want to actually read the definition of this particular word. Just the definition here. So fervor, Fervor, is defined as intense and passionate feeling. So let's get into it. Fervor. There is a fervor for purpose and a zeal for mission. There is something inside that can never be taken away. A fervor that is ever present through hard times and even persisting through downheartedness. It is the love I have inside that needs to be expressed, to share my spiritual thrust in life, through service in an abundant way. That is why passivity, apathy, and lack of involvement become so insidious to the soul. They conflict with that fervor. While I will always have it, there can be turmoil. Lack sets in, and I go out of balance. That is when I open myself to spirit. I say, relax, everything is going to be all right. I will do it. I will enjoy it. I will learn from it. All I need is a feeling, an understanding, and a point in the right direction. My love and fervor for life is renewed, and my direction comes into sharp focus. And there goes the excerpt. And looking at this excerpt here, I find myself thinking about a couple things here. And I think looking at that word zeal, right, starting with that, to have great energy or enthusiasm in pursuit of a cause or an objective, I feel compelled to ask the question, how do you do? And I'm not asking out of like, oh, how are you doing? Like, or like, how are you today? Right? Like, I'm not asking for your state of being, but rather, how are you when you are doing, when you are in action? And I think it's important to, in whatever it is that we're involved in, even taking it just like, and this is specifically, right? We can be doing a lot of things, but I really I want to speak to the rhythms and routines that we have, the parts of playing the game here on this planet, of the routines, because I think there's a lot of power here. Let's say, like, how do you do when you are taking care of your chores, when you have to take care of tasks, when you have to show up for work, when you're taking a shower, washing dishes, whatever it is that you're involved in, or perhaps when you're connecting with friends in social settings. Maybe you're browsing the internet, and and it's very important to just check, at least for me, check myself and how I'm doing. Again, not so much asking for my state of being, but rather, how am I doing things? How am I doing what it is I am doing? And it's important for me, and it's always a reminder and a practice and a challenge to have endeavor. To have endeavor. Actually, that was a little bit of a slip. To have, well, there's some aspect of endeavor. It's funny how that just kind of slipped. And I think, and I think, is to maybe there's a relation. That relates to what I really wanted to say was zeal. Having zeal infused in what I'm doing. To be excited about what it is I'm doing. And I'm always reminded, and I think about little me when I was a child. Think about a child as a model, as a teacher, of doing things with pure zeal, right? When a child's out, perhaps they're playing with their siblings, or just by themselves, or in the park area, or wherever the case may be. It's like they always have this curiosity, and just this enjoying, this fascination with this world, a freshness that's always refreshing, that sense of, I feel, of feeling renewed, that sense of renewal that is so crucial, because we're faced with life, whether you like it or not. You're faced with life. Same for myself. I'm faced with life whether I like it or not. I have to go through the routines. I have to play the game. I have to go through the cycles. I have to go through day and night, sleep, wake up, day and night, and then of course all the other important routines in between, eating, work, a lot of the stuff to play the game, survival. All of that is very important. And so that leads me to the next thing I was talking about, or at least one of the other points that stood out to me from this passage. And they're talking about renewal. And that's something that's really important for me at this point, is to cultivate better practices, modify, and even keep with the stuff that I'm already doing that are help building me and nourishing me, to keep myself renewed. Right? And it's important to do this from the spiritual perspective. Take, for example, sleep. Many people, I would say most people, would value and understand the importance of sleep. But here's the thing. We put so much emphasis like, okay, we need sleep, we need sleep, the body needs sleep, the body needs sleep. But let me share with you this. It's not so much the body needing sleep, but the soul needing renewal. There's a life force powering every single cell in your body, giving it direction. Right? You are always active as a soul with a physical body, not a body with a soul. You are a soul. You have a body. When you go to sleep, you don't turn off like a robot. You don't power down, only to like maybe hours later turn back up, to turn back on. Boop, boop, beep, beep. No, that's not how it is. We're always active 24/7. Our body is still working, because as a soul, we're still powering this vehicle. Our connection to this vehicle is still there, and it's still strong. So, sharing that from that perspective, it's important that we renew ourselves spiritually, because if you take care of your soul, the body will follow suit. Again, because the body's not operating out of its own, there has to be some source, some intelligent, a life force to power the vehicle. It doesn't just operate on its own. Take when you look at a cadaver, they say there's the intelligence. There's a couple of things that are missing when you look at a cadaver. It's like heat, and there was something else: intelligent, life energy, and there was one other thing. I'm kind of butchering this, and I apologize, but there was like There's some things that are clearly missing that would be present if you looked at someone who is alive in a physical body. And so it's important to recognize really the driving force, the life force, and not put so much prioritization, or not giving too much credit to the body when the body is just the means and the vehicle. It's like, hey, hello, what about the source? What about the source? Let's not neglect or forget that for a moment. So soul renewal, all this to say, is really important to really look at your own mental, emotional, your spiritual state, and address the things that are going on in there, taking care of that, cleaning your own house, whether that's journaling, processing things, like whatever form of processing within yourself, and that what that looks like. It's important to have that. You know, one simple way of renewing myself spiritually is simply evaluating my day. You know, and I ask myself some simple questions. Although I will say before I was kind of complicating it and asking too many questions that really just it makes the whole process stressful in itself and too complicated. And if you find yourself in that situation, I highly recommend taking a step back, chill, and just maybe even scrap whatever system you have in place and put something more simple. So for me, I just asked myself a couple questions here. What was my highlight? What were my accomplishments? Anything I would do differently? Anything I learned? I'm going a bit out of order, so this is no particular order, but those are some of the questions. And then I have one section for anything that I want to make a note for myself that isn't covered by any of those four questions that I just named. And so that's pretty much my process. And I'll utilize uh, like Google Docs, the Google Forms. I mean, but there have been times when I feel like it's necessary for myself. I haven't done it as often as much, but I feel I need to get back to it, where I'll just have a conversation with my guides out loud, literally just talking out loud to them and just processing my day. And that for me has been tremendous healing. And very often, I feel myself elevated. I feel myself lighter. And those are the indicators right there. Some good indicators to know that, okay, I'm actually doing some renewing for myself. I am feeling and experiencing that renewal, which is important. And when I do things like that, and that practice, I mean, I find myself having a good night's sleep. And I've had friends of mine who tell me, renewing yourself spiritually can make so much of a difference, where you would need less sleep and yet more quality sleep. Now, personally, I haven't experienced that myself, but I firmly believe that can be a thing. And those are just physical indicators of how we're doing spiritually. A nice little way of like looking at navigating and living in two worlds at once. And so I think it's very important to kind of keep moving along here. As we're moving through the day, one of the challenges I know for myself that can come up often is staying relaxed. Staying relaxed. And, when I think about the key theme, I find myself thinking about okay, relaxing, no matter what's going on, no matter what's going on, either out in my environment and in my inner world, to kind of flow and work through all this and sitting into my power, where I can tap into my zeal. Zeal is an important thing also because we live in a very heavy world. A lot of people feel and are going through life, and from how they feel to their own perspective, it can be very pessimistic. But looking at life simply is meant to be enjoyed because, as I mentioned earlier, we're faced with life, whether we like it or not. So why not look for how great it actually is? And we don't have to settle for the crappy things or the things that I think often our emotions, or we can get emotional about a lot of things that are happening, but that can take away or cloud or narrow our big picture or narrow our picture of life. Because life in general is great, but it can be very easy to be like, oh, to just counter my argument, think, oh, no, it's not that great. And again, I understand. I'm not trying to play naive or stupid here. Trust me, I've had my experiences. But doing the inner work and working with my guides, I've just experienced and have an understanding of what the big picture is. And at least to acknowledge and know that it's important, that it's there. There's more to what we can perceive. Like, I think, one of the things that can happen when it's like, if you were to make that argument, oh no, like I don't think life is all, or life's meant to be great or something, or like if someone sent me an example, or if someone were to make that kind of argument, I think what can drive that argument is buying into what we're seeing out there. But the thing is, our eyes can deceive us, especially if we're just operating in this one mindset of like in the material world, what we perceive in the physical senses, but not paying enough attention to the spiritual and what's going on behind the scenes, but happening simultaneously as we're living life. Like for me, there's no denying it, and it's just a reality. And there has to be moments where I can allow myself to recognize, hey, I need to take a step back. I mean, yes, there's this heavy moments, but they're not the end all be all. And what I've come to understand is like the storm will always pass. The storm never sticks around forever. Just look at the natural world. Look at nature. Yes, the storm, we can look at from hurricanes to tornadoes. Okay, yeah, they happen, but they happen for a period of time before they go away. And looking at that aspect of nature tells me about life, looking at the spiritual universal reality, that storms will always pass. They don't stick around forever. And when the storm subsides, it's in that place where I take that step back and I connect with my big picture. Not when I'm caught up in the storm and all this stuff. That's not the place to do it. Just work through it. Work through the storm, I would say, in that case. So let me come back to Zeal. And to actually tie in what I was just sharing, allowing all that, if I were to allow all that stuff, the negativity and focusing on the bad stuff and all this, and this, buying into the lies that my eyes are telling me, what can happen, what they mentioned in this excerpt, is that I can end up being filled with passivity, apathy, and lack of involvement, where I can get this attitude of, where I can take on this attitude of what's the point? And that's a very dangerous thing, because that goes against why we're here in this school, why each and every single one of us came here. Collectively, we all came here to learn and grow as a soul, to evolve, and even more deeply, to liberate ourselves from ourselves and to expand our sense of freedom. We're all slowly but surely, in our own ways, in our own way, working towards graduating from this plane of existence. That's what our spirit guides did at some point when they were here, through their own means and their own circumstances. Mind you, they were all dealt very different hands, ranging from from all over, even to like the most extreme, like the toughest situation that for many they would justify, again, a poor perspective of life because of their own upbringing, right? And it's not to fault them to feel, again, it's not about like, don't feel that way. No, it's like, it's perfectly understandable. But it's like shifting from the feelings about that to something higher, and understanding that there's a bigger picture to our own life situation. I mean, we chose our situation. That's how much freedom we have. We chose it. Like our life curriculum, everything, even down to our parents and the situation that they went, we chose that. Take that with a grain of salt. That's how much freedom and direction we have. How purposeful we are. Since before we were born, we made a decision. And from that decision, our life on earth started. Big picture. And so, no matter where you are, no matter what you're going through, it will pass. To get to the really meat of this, and what's really important is this: don't let your experiences and what you experience in the world, particularly the negative ones, don't let them dim your light. And for me, I always have this practice, and I always still keep this in how I show up with all the things that are negative, that aren't so pleasant. I always make sure to give space to say to those experiences, what are they trying to teach me? Because oftentimes those that aren't pleasant are there as a teaching tool. Because we are here as students in the game of playing the game of life, and we're learning. And also, growth doesn't happen in our comfort zone. It happens outside our comfort zone when we're uncomfortable. That's where the tremendous growth can happen. And that's why we have the ebbs and flows. And when we have those pleasant times that, in our lives, to simply enjoy them. But the challenge is, how can I enjoy the process when I'm going through the unpleasant experiences, when it's crappy, when it sucks, right? Going through it. A very important challenge, I think, and I take on myself and I work through. Because that right there is mastery. To work through whatever life throws at you. To say, okay, I'm gonna make. It's just like, again, I'm gonna quote the excerpt here. I will do it. I will enjoy it. I will learn from it. It's like, no matter what, I will gain something from this that will help me be a better person, a more evolved soul than I was yesterday. So, I said a lot, but I think as far as to make this all practical and all of this that I said, I want to reference back to what I mentioned earlier about renewal. I think that's the best place to start. And that's something that I've been working on myself, or at least an area where I feel that I need to refine more. How can I go about my day to day, feeling more renewed? So that, and in doing so, what happens as a natural byproduct is that I start experiencing zeal and joy. Again, tuning back into the childlike part that exists and is still there in each and every single one of us. And that right there serves as a wonderful barometer to say, hey, I'm doing pretty well for myself. I'm doing pretty darn well for myself. And that could be that is something that you can look to for yourself and checking yourself. How am I doing? And if you're not feeling your best, it's okay. No worries. No shame, none of that. Instead, just to give grace and to sit and work with and, pivot with the question, what practices can I do? How can I refine my practices, if any? Or perhaps if not that, or how can I start a practice, or what practice that I can start building that can help me feel renewed spiritually. And I mentioned spiritually, but then I will also say and echo, of course, it's important to renew the body physically as well too. Like, for example, shower, eating, diet, and a lot of important stuff like that. So I also want to this kind of like, in some sense, disclaim or clarify. I'm not trying to say ignore the material and focus all on the spiritual, because being here in this planet and living in two worlds, it's about balancing both. What I'm concerned about is not ignoring the spiritual component, but bringing it back into balance. So my spiritual and my material, I'm working with both of them hand in hand, much like I'm working with my two natures, my intellectual nature and my feeling nature. The intellectual nature is the analyzing, dissecting, understanding part of me, the organizing part, the organizing tool, and my feeling part is my drive, my intuitive part, the life force, where the source where zeal comes from, I would say. And then the intellect can just channel that zeal into being an action in the doing part, right? Is that working together in harmony. So whenever it is I'm doing it with enjoyment. And all this is very important because, again, it just comes back to living masterfully. And something that my guides, our spirit guides have done before us. And it's part of why they're here with us, to help us show the way, to empower us, and to offer guidance. Not tell us what to do. That's not what they're there for. But to just offer guidance. Remember, you're on a mission. And it's your own personal mission that you set out to do. Your own mission that does involve working with people. It does involve working with God. And it's your mission, your unique mission, that works in tandem with the bigger picture. So, and I think it's important to remember that, understanding that I have a mission, I have a responsibility to myself to make sure that I have fun doing it in the whole process. Something I strive towards and doing in all my opportunities. Forgiving myself when I don't have those moments, when I'm not my best, or don't feel like I'm having fun or having zeal. But there's always an opportunity to come back, to restore the zeal within. It's there within you. It just needs to be unfolded, to be released, expressed. Don't stifle it. Don't suppress it. And just tune into your mission. Because what you chose to do is a fun one. Make it fun if you don't see it. And carrying yourself with that day to day, for me, it's just life has taken on a different meaning when it comes to purpose and living intentionally and just doing the best that I know how every single day. In all the beautiful successes and messes, warts and all. And so I'll end it there for this particular episode for this month. And so if you made it this far at the episode, thank you so much for your time and attention. I hope you got something out of it. I hope you felt inspired by something that I shared. If you have any feedback or anything you perhaps want me to touch on or talk about, check out the show notes. I have hyperlink of a survey as well. I'm always looking for feedback from people who tune in, from you. And I would love to answer and have some episodes dedicated to answering any questions that you may have. So if so check out my show notes if you want to connect. Then I'm always looking out for anything that I can share that's that really speaks to you. I want to make sure I that I'm sharing to be of service to you, that you get some value out of it, because that's important. And so, go forth, my friend, with zeal, with joy, with your inner child. Express your power, your personal power. Go forth and be a beacon of light. Be the beacon of light that you are. This has been another episode of Spiritual Engineered. I'm your host, Alvin Cepeda, signing out. And as always, take care, my dear friend.